Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to Misinformation in Science and Society. Here to listen, not to judge. I'm your host Annie, and today with us we have Dia, who is a graduate student at Harvard. Okay, should be good now. So yeah, hi. So could you please introduce yourself a little bit and kind of what do you do?
Yeah, my name's Diyaselis Delgado. I'm a graduate student at Harvard. I'm a
Mhm.
third year now, and I work on high energy physics, or otherwise known as particle physics.
Yeah. So why did you choose this path initially, I guess?
Yeah, I've always been very curious as a child,
Mm-hmm.
so I was always very interested in a lot of things.
Yeah.
So it was very hard to choose just one thing to do. But mostly I'm from Puerto Rico, so we had a well, now it's decommissioned, but we had Arecibo Observatory
Mm-hmm.
where I did most of my high school research there. So it was more into the astronomy and physics. So that's kind of where my passion started. And then went to college for physics, and then I'm here, graduate school for also physics.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what's is there a favorite part of um things that you do now? Or yeah, do you have a favorite part?
Um, yeah, I mean, I really like so I'm working right now on different projects, or
Mhm.
usually in several aspects of physics, you can have different types of projects, for example, software, hardware, or just doing analysis. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy the hardware part, building and right now we're working on building some muon panel detectors. So just working and trying out all of the pieces from scratch is really cool because you get to see from start to finish all your product, and then you can actually use what you make to do some physics. So I think that's really cool to be that involved.
Mhm.
But otherwise, I'm working on figuring out dark matter and particle interactions in the from our galactic center. So I think just a lot of our unknowns and not knowing what's out there and trying to figure out it's also kind of frustrating, but also kind of
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's what I enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for the harder build stuff, I'm at school. I don't do I'm at school we have science Olympiad and I don't do it, but I just see my friends building cars and airplanes.
Yeah,
So that it looks really cool and
yeah.
yeah.
Like getting hands-on action on whatever you do, it's one of the best ways to actually learn something,
Hmm.
in my experience. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel it's cool to because if they if something doesn't work out and then they'd know if it's the friction or something so they can make changes. I feel that's such a good experience and yeah. Um so why do you think truth is so important and why do you think misinformation is such a big issue right now?
It's very easy to get carried away, or now it's social media and all these different ways of projecting science in general.
Mhm.
Even YouTube channels, it's very easy for just one. It only takes like one person to say something wrong, and often people just share it.
Mm.
So that's why it's very important to kind of two things: showcase the truth and like or up to your standards, or however you can provide that truth
Mhm.
backed up by science or whatever experiments that you're doing. And
Yeah.
also providing not everyone is at the same level of understanding, so sometimes it's very easy for someone to misinterpret something if you don't really break it down or emphasize what
Mhm.
is the takeaways of whatever you're saying. Um, so I think, unfortunately, technology is our biggest downfall right now
Mhm.
because it's so easy to get the word around. Before, in the olden days, just saying, you would have to print a paper, and that paper it was actually a letter that you would send to certain people, and or you would read it on books, and only people with access with books were given. So that's why we're kind of keeping that track now with papers and articles that are peer reviewed, so
Mhm.
that they ensure that is uh, true or facts, or at least when you're trying out something and it didn't work out, then you know that that's one way of not figuring that out. However, um, not everybody reads papers.
Yeah.
Not everybody is subscribed to some magazine or part of some society, science society that allows you that information. So that's why nowadays, just on your phone, social media, etc., it's so easy to there's no way that you can guarantee what you're reading it's true or not.
Yeah, for sure. Um, what do you think about, would you say there's like a lot of misinformation in like your specific field? Like, um, and like if so, how do people like in the field try to like avoid or like tackle it, I guess?
Yeah, a very good example is something that happened very recently. Um, there was some experiments noticed a gamma ray burst, so just a sudden ray of light emitting
Mhm.
from the universe, and a lot of it's the brightest that we've seen so far, and people were jumping at what can be done, what could this mean, because it didn't really follow some physical significance. So people are saying it might be dark matter, it might be some exotic thing, and people were so busy with trying to get these new ideas so fast that sometimes they don't really break it down and realize that some of those theories were wrong from the beginning,
Mm.
even after publishing an article or something. So there's definitely avenues for misinformation. Sometimes competition is really one way of having misinformation when you're trying to get your own word really, really fast. And it's not so much as misinformation as is more information with mistakes, um, or not the complete information gets carried out. One way of doing it is, like I said, peer review.
Mhm.
Just a lot of collaborations nowadays, experiments, etc., have a long bureaucratic process of what can be published, or what can even be sent on a tweet from the collaboration. It has to go through many, many hands
Yeah.
because people get carried away trying to, keep these innovative thoughts, etc. So it's definitely one of those factors for sure.
hmm Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think like the peer review thing, uh yeah, I've talked to like some other people who also like talked about that, I think. Um, yeah, so
Well, sorry, to add on, I would also like a way of making it not easy, but something new. It would be very helpful because, for example, um, if you as a high school student wanted to give some word out and you don't have the backup to go through some peer review, or you're not part of some collaboration, but you still want your whatever findings or whatever you want to project to
Mhm.
be, complete, there should be some kind of assistance that you could get, that it's not necessarily as formal as a peer review, but yeah, that's open ideas for everyone out there to kind of
Yeah.
start thinking, how can we make this process easier, or at least more accessible to other people as well.
hmm Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I haven't um heard anyone talk about that or like thought about that at all. Um, just going like kind of off of that, what like other things do you think either like institutions or just like us as like just individuals can do to like help eliminate or like avoid or reduce misinformation?
Mm, um, one way to reduce it, well, there's multiple things that are rushing through my mind. One
Mhm.
thing, it, to eliminate it for sure, it's hard if you're talking in a bigger scale, because you can't control everything that's out there.
Yeah.
So that's why I was thinking like new ways of getting things across. And one simple thing that I can think of, if you want to make sure, for example, if you see some misinformation out there and you want to set the record straight, encouraging your students, your professors to do, for example, mini videos or keeping a blog or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you see something, for example, in social media, you can see, oh no, I think that's wrong, and kind of like I'll hint you to this place. But that gets tricky because people often don't like when you reply to stuff. So I mean, it's trial and error, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one way to eliminate it, again, is those processes of not just peer review, but talking about your colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in these big collaborations, it's very easy to walk next door office and talk to, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, or what do you think? And just jotting idea, making that process easier. A lot of scientists out there stay very strict on what their project is and don't really talk with other peers just to get their brain juices going. I
Yeah.
think that would be one good idea of one, learning in general, and second, getting the perspective from different people. So if you put a theorist and an experimentalist, you can get many, many, many ideas running through, and they will learn from each other, and that will help both parties, etc. So definitely collaboration and exposure. That would be my way of, tackling misinformation.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what do you think is like, if there is one, like the worst type of misinformation? Like about what?
Uh, right off the bat, climate change came into mind,
Uh-huh.
which is not necessarily related to my field, although my experiment is in the South Pole. So definitely, if the ice caps are melting,
Yeah.
eventually it could be a problem for me.
Mm.
But I think a lot of people don't realize the um, urgency and impact that day-to-day life has. And um, for example, there's this whole campaigns about straws, and of course that helps, but it's not the only thing. And people, um, yeah, that's one way of putting it. Um, other worse misinformations with the whole COVID,
Mhm.
that whole health thing. There's misinformations and everywhere. I think the worst misinformations often are the ones that involve a lot of people, because it's right, if you put a room of scientists and you show the facts, they'll probably, okay, yeah, I understand this. But
Yeah.
if you put the entire world and you give them some information that not everybody's prepared to handle, um, or to even understand, you can't expect everybody um, to understand this some amount of things. So
Hmm.
I think when you put it on those bigger scales, that's when misinformation is more dangerous,
Yeah.
because once you broaden that group, it's very easy for misinformation to spread. And once it's out there, you can't really reel it back in.
Mhm.
Like they often say, once you say a word, it's out there in the universe. You can't take it back. So I think, yeah, that would be my perspective. Because
Mhm.
in scientific fields, it's when you're in control, well, yeah, it's harder to do misinformation, but when you're trying to do it to a broader community, that's when it starts getting bad.
Yeah, for sure. It's like more people, like more impact, and yeah. For the climate change thing, I actually went to the COP, the UN conference like last 3 weeks ago.
Oh.
Um, yeah, and it was like really cool to see like people that care about like climate change to like come together. But that was like the because like usually I feel like people don't talk, well, they don't talk enough about it for sure.
Yeah. And
And
I've also seen a decline of people talking about it. It seemed like a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, let's say 5 years before the pandemic, it was a big issue.
yeah.
And people are like, oh yeah, climate change. we gotta act now, and then
Mhm.
everything else happens. And I understand there's always different things that are more important or more
Yeah.
imminent, but it is something on the back of that should be on the back of everyone's head. And you
Hmm.
should constantly think about it for sure.
Yeah. And it is like an urgent issue too. It's like
Hmm.
um and very like impactful. So yeah. Um yeah, I also kind of talked about that a little bit with like people at the COP. So that was very interesting. Um and okay, I think that's all my questions about like misinformation. So just for fun, like do you have like a role model or like people that like inspire you? Um either like in your like field or like just like in general.
Oh yeah. There's lots of people that inspire me. I don't have any big names,
Mm-hmm.
but for example, people in my small community inspire me a lot. For example, two of my professors, Carlos Argüelles and Melissa Franklin, they're
Mm-hmm.
very um, they're very caring, and um, they support me a lot. However, they're very ambitious. They've accomplished so much.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a graduate student or even younger in university, as an undergrad, it's kind of like very to look up to them. It's very nice. It's gonna
Mm-hmm.
kind of like keeps you going, saying like one day I'll be there. So those are the people that are kind of like inspiring me right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. Nothing else comes into mind, which is kind of sad, but I'm very thankful for the people that I have near me
Yeah.
because um yeah, they make science fun, and I'm very grateful for my group.
Mm-hmm.
We are like one big science family. Um so I'm very inspired by everybody. Everybody has a different story, and even outside my realm of particle physics, other physicists are
Mm-hmm.
really, really cool to learn from. But yeah, whenever I go to conferences and you have this guest speaker that won a Nobel Prize, and you're like, oh my God. Yeah, it's very humbling too. It's
Mm-hmm.
but I
Yeah.
yeah, aside from that, I can't really think of anyone else. Also my
Okay.
mom. You can't forget about your mothers.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, just like close us out, do you have any like advice for people and especially like maybe like high schoolers or like um in like any like subject or like
Yeah.
area? Yeah.
First, that I say to anyone, try as much as you can as possible.
Hmm.
Usually, as an undergrad, when you have the opportunity to do research, you're kind of bounded by one semester. So there's really, you gotta, let's assume that you finish in 4 years, which is not necessarily the case.
Hmm.
You have, that's some limited amount of time that you have to explore different research fields, no matter what the science, arts, whatever. Do as much as you can, because it's the only way that you're gonna figure out what you like and what you don't like. Um, Before I was doing physics, I had internships to be a surgeon, and I figured out that as much as I like medicine, that wasn't the path for me. So I see lots of people settling for one thing that doesn't really bring them joy. um,
Yeah.
and that is the one biggest mistake. um, but if you have your goals in mind, and if you would like something that to feel accomplished, find something that you're sort of good at, and then it brings you joy, because everything else, as time goes by, you're gonna improve.
Hmm.
So stop thinking about big future plans, and focus on how can you grow and how much can you learn
Yeah,
at this first stage. That would be my um advice.
for sure. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, we